Joining us now, Tamil Nadu IT Minister, Mr. PTR Palanivel Thiaga. Rajan, thank you very much for your time. What's the urgency for this formation of the high-level committee, particularly when you have just 1 year left? This committee will give its report 2 years later. What will it really achieve?
I think the fact that we are forming the committee irrespective of who's going to win the next election is the greatest sign of the purity of intent. The fact is today that the federal structure of India is under worse stress than it has ever been. It is worth noting that it has been continuously under stress since the 1960s, as I've just pointed out in my statement, and that multiple governments of multiple parties and multiple coalitions have tried to address this issue multiple times. And so after two attempts in the 1960s, with the reports coming in the 70s in one case, an attempt in the 1980s, two attempts in the 2000s, yet we are not seeing any improvement, and in fact we are seeing dramatic deterioration. In fact, the series of judgments coming from the Supreme Court in recent times, in particular I would say the November-December 2023 judgment in the state of Punjab versus the Secretary to the Governor and another, as well as the April 8th judgment, tell us that we are fast descending to the notion of rock bottom in the model of federalism that was envisioned by the founding fathers in the Constituent Assembly. Therefore, it is of utmost urgency to have a non-political, properly structured, thoughtful analysis of how this can be improved. And though the previous attempts have not yielded direct results, for example, this judgment of April 8, 2025 relies heavily on the previous 5 attempts to improve the federal working. So I would say it is a sign of good faith that we are doing it consistently for 50 years. It is a sign of good faith that we are doing it irrespective of political party and irrespective of who is in the union government control at this point. And it is a sign of good faith that we are doing it irrespective of the term in which the report will come. Because this is about the people, it is about the country, it is about the states, it's not about the DMK.
With governments with varying political ideologies in power at the center and in states, do you think there could be smooth relations at all?
Look, there ought to be. That is the difference between administration and politics, right? If you look at any notion of country, right, the odds of any one government being able to successfully achieve the best outcomes for the country are exactly zero. Why do I say that? If the government of India tries to administer 1.4 odd billion people with hugely varying cultures, languages, educational status, economic status, development outcomes, it is a guaranteed failure. Anybody with basic logic and who knows how to read history will say it is going to fail. If the states try to run everything including foreign policy and foreign exchange and international trade, it is going to fail. You cannot have every state having its own idea. So the only way the country can prosper is to have actually very actively cooperative governance at both the union level and the state level. That is the best of all outcomes. That's what happens in developed countries. That's what happened in enlightened places, where once you get into government, you are not the government of a party. You are the government of the people. Therefore, it is your duty to work with whichever other government has been elected by the people, especially in a country like India, that unless you work together, you cannot get good outcomes. We are seeing this. This is not a new concept, incidentally. I just want to read out an excerpt, and this is very important. You should remember this. So this is from Thiru K. Santanam, who was a member of the Constituent Assembly, who later is being interviewed by the Rajamannar Commission. He says, a strong center is indispensable if India is not to disintegrate and dissolve in chaos. All agreed. But do not agree with those who equate strength with the range of formal constitutional powers. On the other hand, I am emphatically of opinion that by taking upon itself too many obligations in relation to the vast population spread over the length and breadth of India, the center will become incurably weak. Just see the profound concept in that. The more you abrogate onto yourself, because it is so difficult to actually deliver outcomes, you are making yourself weak. Instead of doing 3 things well, you're trying to do 200 things badly. Because you cannot do 200 things well. It's not in the realm of possibility. Right? He goes on to say, it is only through concentration on essential all India matters and by refusing to share the responsibility in such matters with the states. Don't give up your rights on foreign policy. Don't give up your rights on foreign exchange. Don't give up your rights on running the RBI. While giving complete autonomy to the states in the rest of the field of government. Don't touch anything else. Leave them with education. Leave them with agriculture. Leave them with cooperation. Leave them with the water management. Don't get into it. Only then can the parliament and the central government can be really strong. The tendency towards vague, unhealthy paternalism, which has come to envelop Indian federalism as a result of the dominance of a single party, 68, 69, 70, during the first 2 decades of independence, is as bad for the center as it is unpleasant and provocative for the states. It is, you are trying to do too much, you are going to fail. You do not have the capacity. Not then, when the population was about a third or 40% of what it is now, and not now. The more the government of India tries to abrogate power into itself, it is sealing its own fate of failure.
Briefly, what are the subjects Tamil Nadu would like to be brought back from the central or concurrent list back to the states list?
Yeah, the lists are very long, but we have already talked about those that were shifted in the 42nd Amendment, which is primarily education, health, and a few others. But also, the fact that the lists these days don't seem to have any great weight as far as the government of India is concerned. They are legislating into areas that are clearly state subjects, like agriculture, like cooperation. So, it is not just about what is brought back. The Chief Minister has mentioned the specific subject of education. But if you go and read the Rajan committee report, which I have read, it has 4 or 5 categories. Things that should be moved from union list to state list. Things that should be moved from concurrent list to state list. Things that should be moved from concurrent list to union list, etc. So I think these will be the report of the committee. And we are not going to prejudge that. We have our view, but the commission will come out with its own view.
Is the lack of good governance in most of the states in India a reason for this kind of a shift, the center taking away much of these subjects from the states list?
Who am I to comment on the lack of governance in other states? I am saying that if you look at performance, if you look at things like Human Development Index, Social Development Index, Economic Development, per capita income, access to healthcare, pick anything, Tamil Nadu is a superior performer. All I'm saying is, if the government of India has attention to spare beyond international relations, beyond defense, beyond trying to capitalize on the big shifts in the global trade because of tariffs, it should focus those efforts logically on those states where the outcomes are much, much, much worse than Tamil Nadu. It makes no sense at all that a government, like all governments with limited capacity, should be trying to focus its efforts on the best performers of the country because they happen to be of political parties other than them, and completely ignore progress in places where they have the alleged double-engine sarkar, which are failing very badly in trying to keep up in human development, in social development, in per capita GDP, in educational outcomes, in health outcomes.
The BJP calls this state autonomy demand as secessionism. They also say the DMK, while sharing power at the center as part of the UPA, they keep quiet enjoying powers, but only when they become opposition, they raise these issues to cover up your alleged failures in terms of corruption, law and order, those things.
Yeah, wanting the country to do better, asking for a better operating model is not the first time, and Tamil Nadu is not the only people. So these titles of anti-national, secession and all are not worthy of comment. They are derogatory insults that are not worthy of comment from normal people. But what I want to point out is that when was the Poonchi Commission appointed? When was the committee for the review of the working of the Constitution appointed? Was not the DMK member of the coalition governments in those days? If having this review of the Constitution or asking for better clarity on state relations, if that is considered anti-national, why did the government of Thiru Vajpayee of the NDA of 2000 set up the committee for review of the working of the Constitution? right? It is beyond the pale. It is the accusation of charlatans and intellectually and morally bankrupt people, to use words like secessionist and anti-national. I'm telling you, this is a thoughtful exercise. The Supreme Court has gone through 5 previous attempts, has lamented the fact that none of these attempts have been acted upon, right? 1960s, through Nehru as Prime Minister. 1970s, late 60s, early 70s, Kalaignar as Chief Minister. 1980s, through Indira Gandhi as Prime Minister, Sarkariya Commission. Then 2000, through Vajpayee as Prime Minister. Then 2007, through Manmohan Singh as Prime Minister. Are these all secessionist, anti-national people? It is beyond disdain, such comments.
The recent landmark judgment by the Supreme Court on governors, how does it establish states' rights, and does the Chief Minister become the Chancellor?
No, the bills never removed him as Chancellor. The bills very clearly said what activities and powers are vested with the Chancellor and what are vested with the government. And for those of you who have read the bills are very clear. It says that what we are doing brings us in consonance, in parity, with states like Gujarat, Karnataka and Telangana. My question is, if what we are attempting to do was so according to the governor against the constitution or the fabric of society or his idea of right and wrong. Anyways, personal views are not to be contained in this, but let's assume he had some legal advice. How is it possible that this is already in play in Gujarat? So is Gujarat anti-national? Is Gujarat secessionist? Shall I descend to their level and start using these words? It's nonsense, right? These are the exact same models that are being practiced in at least Gujarat, Karnataka and Telangana. At the time, Karnataka also had a BJP-led government, NDA government. Are they secessionist? What is this nonsense?
How does the recent judgment establish states' rights?
It says very clearly it is not just about states' rights, it's about people's rights, it's about democracy. It says unelected individuals, whether they are the governor or the president, cannot sit indefinitely on bills. I want to make a single point, right? This right-wing ecosystem of alleged, legal purists and constitutional purists that was sleeping at the wheel when abrogation of 370 came, when electoral bonds came, when so many challenges to normal constitutional process came, they were all asleep and dormant and like, Rip Van Winkle. Now suddenly they've woken up with vociferous activity and say, Supreme Court is intruding into this, intruding into that, the President is supreme. I'm asking a question. What did we fight for independence for? It said that nobody else who is not elected by us can get to determine outcomes. In the United Kingdom, the king today, the queen previously, is the head of state. The bills passed by parliament have to get the signature of the king when there's a queen of the queen. When was the last time that a king withheld or queen withheld the signature on a parliamentary bill? And do you know when it was?
No.
It was 1700 and something. Right? In any civilized country, the notion of a titular head or a ceremonial head holding back the will of the people as passed by the assembly or the parliament is anathema to the functioning of democracy. Now I ask the question, did we fight for independence from the British to be self-governing as Indians, only to vest power in the office of president in such a way that the President of India can permanently absolute veto or pocket veto a bill, the right that is not even available to the King of England? We fought for you remember who ran us, right? It was the same United Kingdom, right? In this United Kingdom, even the king cannot hold back the bill from the parliament. Why is it that in India we should give permanent power of veto to some office that can thwart the will of the people? Therefore, the Supreme Court has opined very clearly that no one is above the law. They've been very clear. They are saying, we are not saying that the governor and the president are justiciable. We are saying that the actions taken by the governor and the president are subject to judicial review. That is the core of democracy. There can be no human being, particularly one appointed by a government of India, that becomes above the law. Then we are worse than a monarchy. right? Everybody's actions are subject to the law. That includes the governor and the president. That's what the Supreme Court.
In terms of the allocation of funds to Tamil Nadu, the BJP gives data that during the UPA regime, you were given 1.52 lakh crore versus now over the last 11 years, 6.21 lakh crore. How would you, they say numerically in absolute terms, it's many times more than that. How would you justify your claim that it's much less?
Look, the stupidity of this boggles the mind, right? What is the value of a loaf of bread today compared to 24 years ago? Because their starting point is 2004, 21 years ago. What is the value of a rupee today? What does petrol cost today compared to 21 years ago? Anybody with any brains will look at allocation relative to one of two things. Either as a percentage of the GDP or as a percentage of the total exchequer, or relative to the allocation to other states. All numbers keep increasing at all times. At one point when I was a boy, petrol used to cost 2 rupees a litre. Now it costs 100. In the UPA regime it costs 60. Now in the NDA regime it costs 100. Is that the failure of the NDA regime? At least I should compare it to the price of a barrel of oil, right? So this nonsense of taking absolute numbers is only fit for people who have not passed elementary school mathematics, right? Otherwise they realize that the value of a rupee changes all the time. Using a rupee from 21 years ago as a beginning point to a rupee 21 years later is the equivalent to saying at that time milk used to be 1 anna, now it is 5 rupees, therefore you are a failing government, you have led to a 5,000% increase. It's stupidity, it's not worth a comment.
Last two questions. With regard to delimitation, you have strong views that states which effectively control their population should not be penalized by having delimitation on the basis of population. Do you have a solution in mind besides your demand to freeze the present proportion of MPs from these states?
It is not my position to comment individually. The Chief Minister, along with the Chief Ministers of other states, has issued a Joint Action Committee statement that what was thought fit and wise for Tirumadi Indira Gandhi, one of the tallest leaders of India, and Thiru Vajpayee, one of the tallest leaders of India, what was thought fit and wise for them, which is to not penalize states and therefore to freeze for another 25 years, is what this Joint Action Committee has asked for. I don't think it can get simpler than that, either by absolute terms or by contextual reference to great leaders who applied their mind and who had India in their hearts. I don't have anything more to say about it.
Lastly, when three-language policy, the centre claims it's only learning of an additional Indian language and not Hindi imposition, what is Tamil Nadu's objection?
How many places has there been successful implementation of three-language policy? I mean, again, the inanity, the stupidity of these questions bothers me a lot. Do you know what it takes to actually teach a third language to lakhs and lakhs of children, many of them coming from poor backgrounds in rural areas where the school system is not capable of running even the classes that they have now? Now you got to get new teachers, you got to get new classrooms. What are you going to do? Nowhere in the world, not in the international baccalaureate curriculum, not in the international Cambridge curriculum, not in the advanced placement of the United States. Nowhere in the world is there a mandatory three-language formula, because there is no scope in educational science to suggest that teaching three languages compulsorily at a young age actually gives you benefit. It gives you huge cost. So I'm saying, even absent everything else outside, even if you're a purely unread, unlearned, unthoughtful, unaware person, at the very least you should take the experience of India over the last 50 years or 75 years. In Tamil Nadu, we have had a two-language formula and we have done relatively spectacularly well. Have we done as perfectly as we'd like? No, we want to keep on improving. When we are struggling to reach perfection in two-language formula, why should somebody come and tell me to do three-language? On what basis? Have they at least done it well somewhere so I can emulate them? They have failed at one language. Look at the percentage of people who fail Hindi in Uttar Pradesh. What is this? It is beyond rational, like human thinking, to take a formula that has never worked anywhere and to replace your relatively successful formula because somebody says so. It is beyond the notion of self-respect. It is beyond the notion of rational thinkers. It is beyond the notion of kind of self-determination and federalism. Why do we have a state government?
Last question. Would you concede that the DMK, as part of the UPA, failed to ensure NEET would not be through? Now you fight against it.
Look, there was no question of the NEET being through or not through. Very many formulations of the NEET happened at different places. As long as there was a UPA government in Delhi, there was no NEET imposed on us. So everybody had different roles at different times. At the current stage, this NEET was imposed by the Supreme Court through a judgment. And it did not happen when we were there. So again, look, I don't have time for politics.
Right.
If you have political questions, go find somebody else to answer. If you have policy or administrative questions, talk to me. I don't have time to talk about random nonsense in politics. Find somebody else to do that.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. PTR Palanivel Thiaga, the IT Minister in Tamil Nadu, talking to us. In Chennai with Suresh, Sam Daniel, Find TV.